Hello, it's Blue Orange 22, and I'm here with one of the heroes of the men's rights movement, Don Wolfson. Don, you've been commenting on my videos for a while now. It's really cool having you here. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So, tell us a little bit about what you do, who you are, and any organizations you're a part of.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the comment that I left where you actually asked me for the interview because
Sure.
I mentioned that my last two boyfriends had been men's rights activists. And how I got there was back in 2019. Second day of school in August, I get this text from my son. Hey, mom, the sheriff came by to talk to me, and we'll talk about it after school. And I'm like, what? Oh my God, what the heck? And I said, oh no, I'm calling you. So he told me that this girl that he had met over the summer had falsely accused him of rape, and the sheriff had come to the school to question him about it. You know, panic, panic, panic. Oh my God, what's going
Uh-oh.
on? Um, Long story short, because like I said, I could talk about this for hours, but long story short, the girl made the mistake of asking two of her friends to lie for her. And they both grew consciences, and we tracked them down and got them to recant, and the district attorney dismissed the charges after 2.5 really hellacious and very expensive years. When the attorney called and told me, I literally screamed in his ear. But
Was there any punishment for the
it
girl?
wasn't, of course not.
Of course not. Yeah.
She never recanted, and we actually considered whether we could go after her with a lawsuit, and both the defense attorney and the private attorney that I'd hired essentially said that if we tried to go after her, there was a good chance she might run to a victims' rights group. The district attorney might bring the case back because he did drop the charges without prejudice. So technically, it's still an open case. When I told my son that, he didn't want to have
But
anything to
that's
do with it.
hang on. That's ridiculous because if you had two witnesses recant and say this was an organized lie, then that case should not be able to be reopened just on the whim of the initial accuser. That's very
I
that
would
is
agree with you, but the unfortunate thing is that the district attorney didn't choose to dismiss it with prejudice, and that means that it's an open case for the rest of his life, literally for the rest of his life.
that is so scary.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, I don't want to be, and I had kids late, so he's 25, I'm 68. I'm gonna be dead and gone when he's 50 maybe, and I don't want this hanging over my kid's head when I'm not here to help. The other thing is he was diagnosed with autism, so he's very high functional, but he's
I bet that happens a lot.
awkward socially, and some educational difficulties and whatnot, and
I
easy to take advantage of.
I bet predatory women prey on men with Asperger's or autism all the time with false accusations.
And literally, this girl and her friends dated him, dated his friend has autism. The friend's mother feels like they were literally targeting autistic kids. But anyway,
Well,
so
I just
after the charges were dismissed, I'm a little politically connected in my county. It's like a tiny little conservative county in rural California. And I was helping this local guy with a veterans issue. And it turns out that he's a men's rights activist. He's one of NCFM's advisors, and um, he actually helped my son out with a letter. He looked over, the witness statements, and he basically wrote a letter saying that he's an expert on the subject of false accusations. I believe this is a false accusation. Don't use the arrest in your hiring decision. Basically, this is a good kid. And we dated briefly, but he had a really bad experience with a woman also, and really severe PTSD. There was a fake domestic violence charge. He lost his career as a law enforcement officer, had his guns taken away for a time. And he connected me with NCFM. He showed me the red pill, so took me down that rabbit hole. But we couldn't have a relationship because of the PTSD.
Right.
And so
So it's so scary
I
how
got involved.
it's so scary how
No, go
common
ahead.
this is. It's so scary how common this is.
Oh,
You know.
absolutely. And I'll get to that. But
Well, I want to get.
so
I don't want this to become like a video about autistic men and your son, but it's. I feel like as we're recording this, all of a sudden, I want to just briefly go back there a little bit because it's
sure,
such a haunting prospect. The idea of autistic men being targeted and then imprisoned for rape, because you know how rapists are treated
right.
in prison, and that's absolutely horrific. Did you guys ever determine a motive of his accuser?
I only have a theory.
Go on.
Um, See, when we got the well, first when he was arrested, there was not only a rape charge, but there was also he was accused of raping an unconscious person. And he said, "Oh, hell no. She was wide awake the whole time. She initiated things. She told me what to do." My son, it was his first time, and this girl had experience. And now she's apparently claiming that he raped her while she was unconscious. Well, it wasn't until a couple months later that we got the police report, and she claimed that she woke up, he was raping her, and his hand was on her mouth so hard that she couldn't breathe. Well, how he tells it is that there was a sleepover. There were six kids, and his friend and the girlfriend went upstairs. There were two others on a sofa, and he and this girl were on a blow up mattress. The two on the sofa were literally 9 feet away and direct line of sight. And they were having sex, my son and this girl, and he heard these two on the sofa talking or giggling or something, and this girl was making a lot of noise. So he put his hand on her mouth just to let her know, hey, they can hear us. And she got mad, said, I'm done, and pushed him off. So I think he offended her. But, that's just a theory. We don't really know.
Yeah, could just be
So,
could just be a psychopath targeting a weak victim. I
well, and
think.
it's not the first time either. There were statements from other people that she had accused somebody else. Never took it to the police like this one, but she did it before.
Right. Yeah. And I imagine there are people who that's what they go through in life. That's what they enjoy doing. They enjoy targeting people and putting them in prison. I'm sure there's women who it's a serial offense that they commit is going around seeing if they can get men arrested or charged with domestic violence or with sexual assault. It's very scary. So
Yeah.
to circle
No,
back to
that's
your son,
okay.
but that's just
No, I don't doubt it. But so anyway, this guy I briefly dated, he put me in touch with the NCFM women's group, and they put me in touch with a group called D3, which is Decriminalized Developmental Disabilities, and they actually help people with autism and so on who run into issues with the legal system. But the NCFM women's group is kind of where I landed, and I was mostly just coming to their support meetings, and then all of a sudden, the then president pulled them out of NCFM, and I don't know why. She never told me. I've talked to Harry Crouch and Katrina a little, and there was some disagreement on something. But anyway, so all of a sudden, instead of being the NCFM women's group, we became AFA, and we decided to make it a group about false accusations against anybody. And then the year after it was founded, our then president had a crisis with her son who had been falsely accused of rape, had to step back, and suddenly I was the president of the group. So
How
I
ironic is
take a
that?
lot of contact calls, and I'll tell you, it's mostly um, women accusing men. It's sometimes minor girls accusing men. Sometimes their mother is behind them because she's pissed at somebody. But it isn't only men by any means, but the vast majority seem to be some kind of sexual abuse, kind of an accusation against men. And what I see is many, many, many of them getting pushed into plea deals. Some of them unwillingly, and some of them just decide that there's no way they're going to win because they don't have anything on their side. Like my son was incredibly lucky that this girl was dumb enough to get people to lie for her. But some of these people, it's just one person's word against the other, and the courts are just disposed to believe the woman, right? And so there's all these men who are suddenly in jail for something they didn't do, and when they come out, they're going to be registered sex offenders. So it's an epidemic.
See, I go around town in a men's rights activist T-shirt. I know it's backwards on your screen, but it says men's rights activist. I go to social events in it. I go to work in it. And I've always thought if I ever become more prominent, if this channel ever grows and I ever become, famous, so to speak, I bet that's going to happen to me. Any mainstream, like the first MRA celebrity for sure is going to be targeted for that in some way. And I already have been falsely accused, not of that, but
Yeah.
I talked to this, I lived in London, this feminist group on Facebook, and we got into a debate, and let's be honest, an argument. And a few days later, they were making comments about how I allegedly had gone to one of their events and security had to stop me by the door and I was trying to break in and nothing happened. It was just a Facebook comment. But just the fact that they were so willing to lie so easily was something that could potentially lead to harm to that other person or
Yeah.
legal harm to other person. It's really scary.
Yeah. Well, the guy I dated who lives in my little county, he after he split up with the woman who made the accusation, he married his book editor, and she had some kind of mental break and started saying, I know everything I could do to hurt you. And he just basically took some money out of the safe and said, you're taking this money, you're leaving, and if you ever come back, I'm going to sue you for everything you're worth.
Jesus.
And then when he was going for his PhD at UC Davis, he made a comment uh, on his experience as a police officer where he'd seen domestic violence cases, and he could say just from his own personal experience that the woman was at least as often the aggressor as the man was. Well, those women decided to sabotage his PhD, and if he hadn't gotten he got their emails on a public records request, basically sued the university and got his PhD paid for, but they tried to sabotage his career. And then going back to the red pill, I had a false accusations event in Sacramento, um, and you will never guess who showed up at my event.
Who?
Lovely gentleman named Fred Hayward,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and he's my current boyfriend actually.
Oh,
He's
wow.
a wonderful
Okay.
guy, but he's gone through some crap
Yes,
himself.
he has.
If you watch the movie, you know.
Yep. 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 I actually want to go back to something you said. You were part of NCFM Women, and your
Yes.
group now is a women's group. And this is something. This is a question I know the answer to because I'm a moderator of an admin. I'm an admin of a men's rights group. There are a lot of women involved in this space, aren't there?
Yes, there are. And a lot of it, I wouldn't say all of it, but a lot of it is because their husbands or boyfriends or sons have been trashed by some other woman making a false accusation.
So let me ask, before what happened to your son happened, did you have an awareness? I mean, of course, a general awareness, sure, but did you have any inkling of how bad it was?
I didn't. You know, I saw the whole Me Too thing hit social media, and I went, well, you really can't just believe somebody because of their gender. But no, I was not aware at all, not whatsoever. And then, you know, I got involved with the support group, and now I take submissions for people asking for help, and it's rampant. You know, plus I go to meet, I don't know if you know who Davia is, but they're an affiliated group
Hmm.
that's international, and I mean, this isn't just a problem in the US, it's all over
Everywhere.
the world. It's really bad.
When you tell, um, I like to call them muggles, people who aren't feminists or not MRAs and they're not involved in the whole gender war and they don't really know about this stuff. When you tell them that you're an MRA, a normie, so to speak, or that you work in this space, what kind of reactions do you get?
Um, some of them are really offensive, like, you're one of those mamas that babies your son and bails him out and doesn't let him take his medicine when he does something wrong, I mean, stuff like that. Sometimes it's respectful. I actually am somewhat left politically, and I'm part of a progressive group, and surprisingly, they were really supportive of me when this all happened. I was halfway expecting to get, well, how do you know he didn't do it and that kind of stuff. And actually, they were very, very supportive.
I find overwhelmingly people, Republicans, feminists, X, Y, and Z, are much better in person than they are online, or than they are
That's for sure.
in a Facebook comic section. And I have that problem. I have that problem where I go down a rabbit hole on a comment thread or something. I have to remind myself most women are like this. These are crazy people that go on the internet on purpose to try and stir stuff up.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, 20 years ago, if someone had come up to you and said, I work for an organization that helps mostly men who are falsely accused of sexual assault, how do you think you would have perceived that person?
I don't know, but I would probably have at least listened. I don't know, I've never been kind of person to just jump to conclusions, but you know, it's different when it happens to you personally.
Yeah, yeah. So this was when your son, this was 2019, right?
He was 18 and he was doing what you call a super senior year at school. He just changed high schools because all of his friends had just graduated and he had to do this fifth year. And over the summer, he was hanging with this friend he had met at the old school but had moved to the new school. And there's this girl. But he was 18, she was 18. He was so proud to tell me, Mom, I made sure she wasn't a minor because we really talked to him about, you know, not getting involved with underage girls because there were girls on the wrestling team that he was friends with. And
Yeah, I mean, 18, 17 isn't a big deal, I don't think.
no, but this girl was like 3 years younger.
No.
The one that he was closest to. But the girl who accused him was also 18, and he was very careful to make sure it was 18. So this just hit him completely out of left field.
So 7 years later, it's 2026. Red Pill came out 2016. Do you think it's gotten better or worse? Or both? Because sometimes people say both.
I don't think it's gotten better. I just hear too many stories from people who are just devastated. You know, my fiance just got hit with this historical abuse case from 1984, and my son got accused by his niece, and her mother's behind it because she doesn't like him, and on and on and on. And I get something. almost every day. I really, I have no feel for how bad it was back then because I wasn't involved, but I don't think it's gotten better.
Do you think people are more, do you think the general public is more aware and or more sympathetic to this cause and groups and people like you?
Oh, that's hard to say. Again, if I think that people believe in our justice system until they're given a reason not to. So I think that people don't know unless they're impacted or they know someone who's impacted.
Yeah. I think the reason why I said better, worse, or both, a lot of people say both because what I think between 2026 and 2019, misandry is at an all-time high, but also so is the awareness of it. So is the resistance. So the problem has gotten worse, but the resistance has gotten better, so to speak. I think the awareness of the problem has gotten worse, but the awareness of the problem has also gotten worse. Whereas I think 20 years ago, if you say, "Oh, I'm falsely accused," there's really nothing for you. There's really no support, and there's no network of people who understand that it's an issue. Whereas now, it's pretty much a mainstream belief that, okay, there is this movement of people who support falsely accused men or allegedly falsely accused men. And even if they look at it with suspicion, they're aware that it's a big enough problem that that organization exists in the first place. It's like I always tell people, if divorce really wasn't that difficult for men, you wouldn't have lawyers who can sustain careers on doing nothing but supporting divorced men. So,
Yeah, well, and the whole criminal justice system is a big money pit. I mean, you could go on for hours about just that. And there's innocence networks in every state. There are, exoneration groups and so on. I don't think there's enough support at the front end. But I don't think people even know anything's there until they get hit with it, and a lot of them until after it's over, like me. I had no idea this was out there.
yeah. So, suppose I got 100,000 people together and I said, I'm going to write a petition and get 100,000 people to sign it so that it has to move forward to whatever government body to inspect it. What legislation could be crafted that would help? That would have a realistic chance of getting passed that could help? What would it look like? Or is it something that you have to fix at a
Uh,
lower level?
well, well, so realistic chance of getting passed. Now, someone in my group wanted to pass something called the Reputation Recovery Act, which would have compelled the press to basically um, either put something in their
I love that.
articles saying this person was acquitted or
I
whatever,
love that.
and or delist the articles, and that got shot down in flames on First Amendment grounds. But there have been some successful laws around things like police questioning. California and Illinois both have made it illegal for the police to use coercion or deceit or abuse against minors. And I believe Pennsylvania has also made it illegal to do that with developmentally disabled people. Really, it needs to be everybody.
That, by the way, that
Um,
first bill, that would not violate the First Amendment. The First Amendment means the government cannot punish you for the things you say as long as they don't incite violence. So
but it
requiring,
also includes freedom of the press
um,
and telling the press what they have to do is the problem. Although I think
but the press
I
chose,
think there might be a way to do it with, if you had a really smart somebody who
yeah,
was really smart at crafting legislation, there
because
might be a way to do it.
the press introduced burden on that innocent party, and they profited from the fact that they wrote about that story. So I don't
Yeah, I
like,
mean, they've inflicted harm, really.
yeah, I don't like, and I'm a big proponent of the First Amendment, but I do think that some exceptions could be constitutional. And what did she call it? The Reputation Repair Act?
Reputation Recovery
Recovery
Act.
Act. Yeah. Well, I would have supported that for sure. That would have been um, a good idea.
Yeah. And then there's getting rid of qualified immunity and prosecutorial immunity. I mean, if you can prove that, somebody fabricated evidence or withheld evidence or whatever, it should not only result in the charges being thrown out and, either a new trial or just flat out ended. It should result in consequences for those people that did that. And then there's false accusers. There should be consequences for them too, but nobody wants to go after them.
Yeah. And feminists do make a fair point when they say that a lot of rape victims don't get justice because there simply isn't enough evidence to prosecute the rapist, and so they go free. And
Yeah.
that's not an
Uh,
untrue. That's not an un.
and yet they prosecute people on someone's word. I have talked to so many people who have been honestly thrown under the bus by their own attorneys, being told, you're not going to win this, take the plea. And the only evidence there is the other person's word against theirs.
I think there has to be more than just word. But
There does.
but
There
does
does.
but how do you do that in a way that if someone doesn't have physical evidence and they are telling the truth and they are a genuine victim, then what? It's tricky. But you
Yeah,
just
I
you
don't
can't
I don't know what to say because,
you just
if there's absolutely nothing, and that's what a lot of these historical cases are, is there's absolutely nothing but the person's word, and maybe it did happen, maybe it didn't, but people are going to jail on the presumption that somebody wouldn't lie about something like that, and people do.
people, yeah, women do, men do, people do. Believe all women, and it was all women at first. They're lying that it wasn't
Yeah,
like that. It's so sexist because you're saying that one gender is inherently more honest than the other. So in other words, they're saying I was born the less honest gender because I'm male.
that's basically true. And then people don't believe that children would lie, but children are coached, children are coerced, children tell people what they want to hear if you badger them enough. So that's problematic right there.
I believe the sleepovers were weird. I don't think it was coming from a nefarious place, but I do not think Michael Jackson is guilty of child molestation. And I do think those kids were coached by their parents. I may be wrong, but I did a little bit of a deep dive into this. And while what he did, the sleepovers, really weird, really creepy, should not have done that. I do believe that the children were not touched, and I do believe that the parents had coached them. And one of them came out actually and said that after the fact. So just to
Yeah.
throw that in there. It's a fun little fact. So what is the current states of advocacy for false accusations? Is there any current legislation, any current bill, any current campaign?
Right now I am not aware of anything in California. I've seen some things, but I haven't had the time to focus on it, honestly. My group is too small and I'm stretched too thin.
Mm-hmm.
But I do try and get in touch with the Northern California Innocence Project every year and find out what they're working on. That's how I knew about the law on, police questioning of minors. And there was another one that allowed arrests to be sealed after a certain point. Unfortunately, that one doesn't help my son, but they do actually automatically seal arrests once you pass the statute of limitations if you weren't convicted. And either you were acquitted or the charges were dismissed with prejudice. Without prejudice is another can of worms, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just the way the DA or the prosecutor, whoever makes that choice, can just do it on a whim, just decide to do so or not so on a whim. That's something that's a law I would support changing. There has to be an actual standard as to when it's with prejudice or not. Not just, oh, well, let him just decide whatever he feels like that day. I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean, it's not right to leave a case open for the rest of a person's life, at which point it can show up on a background check and prevent you from getting a job or a certification or a license or whatever. It's just not right.
Yeah, especially when it wasn't because, oh, they no longer had enough evidence to convict. It's now they had direct evidence that the story was a fabrication. You had two people saying not just, oh, we don't remember anymore. Two people saying, oh, yes, we definitely lied and made it up. That's the most infuriating part. So anyway,
Yes, very infuriating. It gripes me to this day. You have no idea. Burns me really bad.
it's always in the back of my head. I wear these shirts. What if a couple women around town have been seeing me and they're, as we speak, plotting on how to get me? You know? A-
Yeah. My
Anyway,
son doesn't trust people like he did before, and this is a big part of why.
well, I wouldn't mind having him on here. I don't know if he wants to do that or not, or if he wants. If like, I know my personality type, I would be printing flyers and putting them all over town. I'm innocent. It would enrage me so much I could not
Uh,
stop talking about it. So,
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
no
But
pressure. No pressure.
I think his attitude is he just wants to forget about it and move on with his life. But I can ask him.
Sure. Sure. Okay, so we are definitely going to do this again.
Okay.
I feel uncomfortable using the word fun because of the content, but certainly very, very interesting. Actually, a lot more interesting than I thought. I thought it was going to be just, oh, here's my organization, this is what we do, and these are the stats. Instead, it took quite a wild turn, I have to say. I'm really looking forward to publishing this one and seeing some of the conversation that it sparks. So, this is Don Wolfson. Is there any organization you want to plug before we stop?
Advocates for the falsely accused and decriminalize developmental disabilities.
Fantastic. I will put a link to those groups in the description of the video. Everyone, this is Blue Orange 22, Faces of the MRM, Don Wolfson. Thanks for watching.